Welcome to the lecture on population sampling techniques, or as I like to call it, how not to waste your time. There are many reasons for choosing sampling techniques over counting every single organism in your study area. Here are a few. Take a look at them and make a choice. Which do you think are the best? Too many organisms? They move too quickly to be counted accurately? Maybe ecologists don't like the outdoors. It does get chilly. 1 and 2, maybe none of the above because you can come up with your own. But really, we circle around number 1 and 2. Why? Because sampling techniques save time. It stops us from either destroying or interrupting the natural cycles of organisms. And also, when we're testing multiple variables at one time on one habitat, we don't have time to count every organism. And it's best to see the observations in one location over a given time instead of trying to hop from one location to another to another. The 3 sampling techniques we're going to go over are quadrats, indirect counting, and mark and recapture. So let's get started. Quadrats. These are locations within your study area that are of the same size and much smaller than your study area. Oftentimes we like to divide one study area into either 10 or maybe 100 quadrats. If they're all the same size and it's some sort of easily divisible number like 1/10 or 1/100th, it's much easier to multiply. The first step that we start after that is counting every single organism in each quadrat. And then we average the population density for each organism in each quadrat by taking the number of total organisms in all the quadrats that we looked at and dividing it by the number of sampled quadrats. So if we sampled maybe 5 quadrats, we add up the number of organisms that we saw in each one divided by 5, and that's our average density. We then take this average density and multiply it by total quadrats we have in our study area. So if when we divide that to get the average density, we might come up with an average of 7 organisms per quadrat. And if we have 10 total quadrats, we come up with an average or a total population of 70 organisms. It's important to realize that each sampling technique has specific parameters. For the quadrat method, it's best when populations are dispersed and not when populations are clumped. For instance, in your sampling sites this next week, you might have 1 or 2 trees in your whole study area. Well, if one of your trees is directly in your quadrat, then you might come up with an answer of 14 different trees. Consider what sampling method to use. Indirect counting. This is great for organisms that move around a lot. You simply count the signs that these organisms leave behind. Tracks, nests, scat, whatever. It's best when the sign is reliably visible and the organisms or the sign is a fairly constant number. Mark and recapture. This is where we capture and mark a number of organisms and return them to the population. A lot of people don't like this because oftentimes you end up fighting the organism just a smidge. Over a few periods, what we do is we continue to capture more of the population and determine the percentage marked versus unmarked, which we are making during our second or third or fourth capture. The basis of this is that the proportion of marked individuals is going to be in the same proportion as was initially marked. So if you capture 10 individuals, you mark them, and then you recapture 10 individuals, and all 10 of those are still marked, then you fully capture the entire population. But let's say instead that if you captured 10 and the next time you only got 1 marked little coyote or fox, then that would tell you that there were 10 total coyotes or foxes in the land of around. And mathematically it looks like this, where P, as you might have guessed, is the population, M is the number of organisms marked, R is the marked recaptures, and C is the second sample size. And so by multiplying this in, you get to see how many organisms there really are based on how many you're recapturing that are still marked. So what are some assumptions of mark and recapture methods? Take a look at this, pause the video, think about it, and we're back. If you didn't pause the video, maybe your fingers will move a little more quickly next time. All of the above. In mark and recapture, we cannot have any emigration or immigration, things leaving or things coming out. Understand that the population is going to need to mix, and then on the second sampling, mark organisms have the same chance of being recaptured as unmarked organisms. A group of students sampled the number of bristlecone pine trees on a mountain above Georgetown. I love that area. They counted the number of trees in a 10 meter by 10 meter area and found a population density. If the total area is 10,000 meters square, what's the total estimation of trees on this mountain? Please pause now, do the math, and then come back when you're ready. What we can do is we can take this number and just simply move the decimal place however many zeros, such that 0.42 trees becomes 4,200 trees. Okay, just this last one more. Figure this one out. Please bring your notes and any questions you might have to class, and be prepared to do some ecology. Take care.